Their social media, YouTube, and everything like that. And it's something that is also noticeable not just in India but in other countries as well, like the US with their Christian streaming channels and everything. And I just want to know, how is it that they're so good at it, but then the left wing can't seem to capitalize on it?
I think we take one question at a time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great question. It does trouble me sometimes, but I think, look, to hate is always a sexier ideology, pardon my language, but it's sexier to sort of rouse people against something, and especially when it comes to hate, because I think what you're doing is you're appealing to sort of emotions like anger, you're appealing to emotions like fear, you're trying to rouse those emotions out of you. Whereas the counter to it is don't fall for hate, right? Or is try and preach brotherhood, is try and preach harmony, which is in no way as rousing a cause as well sometimes. So that is one aspect of it, that and this is classic sort of fascism as well. If you go back, it's always easier to sort of push for things, push for causes which intrinsically involve hate, which intrinsically involve fear, because people are more likely to take it up. So that for me is a very simple example of why this kind of content sells, because essentially, as I said, what they're trying to do is trying to paint this image that this is really the last refuge of Hindus in the world, and they keep saying this. They say that Hindus are a global minority. This is the last refuge left, as if Hindus from across the world have all sort of come here and occupied India. And if we don't take action, then Hindus will be wiped off. So somewhere what happens is all of us have carried a lot of this baggage from the start. Even when we were kids, even when we were in school and things like that. I remember growing up in a Bombay back then, in the shadow of the 92-93 riots. So some of these myths were very, very prevalent at that point. And then when you carry these myths, all that it sometimes takes is one stray example here and there of a confirmation. And you say, yes, this is the myth that I've heard about. So that sort of becomes a thing that you then hold on to all your life. And these are the moments that they also try and capitalize on. Because if there's one example of a Muslim guy killing a Hindu girl, which happened in Shraddha Vaikar and Aftab's case, they was the whole ecosystem was so quick to basically keep churning out content which would reiterate their religious identities. Except that after that, there were so many different cases where sometimes both of them were Hindus, sometimes the guy was Hindu, the girl was a Muslim, and so on and so forth. But you wouldn't think of those at all. You wouldn't even remember that. So I think the ecosystem's also gotten very good at understanding what the messaging is and understanding how to convey that messaging very effectively. Which I think the other side, the left wing, or the liberals have not been able to sort of gather at all. The other quick limited point that I also do want to make is I think there's a sense of fierce ideological commitment that I don't see on the other side, that I don't see among the liberals, right? I mean, with these guys, oftentimes they're not really making money, oftentimes they're not really earning very tangible things out of doing this work, but they do it because they're so ideologically driven. I'm not very certain if we see that kind of dedication and determination on the other side. I think sometimes we're all very happy fighting in our little WhatsApp groups and walking out of a WhatsApp group and thinking this is my revolt of the day and I'm done, right? Whereas a Kavi will go on and write a song about it and get millions of people to see it. So I think there's also that difference, because in my view, the counter to all of this is basically to reiterate the values that we've all always stood for, and the values that we've somehow taken for granted, right? I remember growing up in school, there used to be these things saying "Hum sab ek hain," Hindu, Muslim, bhai bhai, unity in diversity, and so on and so forth. And I would keep thinking that why do we need to repeat this? Of course, "Hum sab ek hain." Of course, Hindu, Muslim, bhai bhai. But now, 30 years later, 35 years later, I see why it was important to reiterate that. Except that I think people like me and maybe some people in the room, I think we all started taking these values for granted. Right? I wish I could show you.